My name is Jean Sanders. I'm 33 years old. And this is the story of how my mother disowned me on the day of my college graduation, only for me to return over a decade later, owning the very hospital my sister's husband runs. It began in a gown, cap, and heels I bought secondhand. I stood at the top of the auditorium stairs, heart pounding as my name echoed across the loudspeaker. Jean Sanders, Bachelor of Health Systems Administration, summa cum laude. 1,000 hands clapped, but I was only searching for two faces in the crowd. Two faces that never showed up. I had called the house 3 times the night before, left a message each time. No one answered. And now, the cold, sinking realization that they weren't coming made my fingers go numb beneath my diploma. After the ceremony, a few of my professors came over to shake my hand. "We're expecting great things from you, Jean," Dr. Halvorsen said, beaming. But I couldn't respond. Not really. Not when every voice around me sounded like it was underwater. Not when every hug from friends only highlighted the ache of who wasn't there. My roommate hugged me, and I forced a smile for the photo. But inside? I felt like a child again, small, discarded, forgotten. I took the bus back to our small town of Meadowfield that evening. Still wore my graduation gown. Still held the program in my lap like some proof I existed. When I reached home, my suitcase dragged behind me, I opened the front gate and saw balloons tied to the porch railing. For a moment, my breath caught in hope until I saw the banner. "Congratulations, Madison. Pre-med acceptance party. My little sister. The golden one. The favorite." I walked up the steps, blinking hard as I knocked on the door. When my mother answered, she looked surprised, but not the good kind. "You're early," she said curtly. "Early for what?" I asked, confused. She blinked. "Well, it's Madison's Day. Surely you knew." I stood there silent. My cap still in my hand. My diploma folder tucked under my arm. "You didn't come to my graduation," I whispered. "We had Madison's acceptance to Stanford to celebrate." "Priorities, Jean," she said, her voice edged in condescension. "Madison's going to Stanford?" I asked, stunned. But the college fund." "Oh," she said, looking suddenly annoyed. "That money's going to better use. Madison's future has structure. She's going to follow in your father's footsteps at the clinic. You chose something else." "I chose to build systems that save lives," I said, my voice cracking. "You knew that. I thought you were proud when I got that scholarship." "You always had ideas," she replied. "But not everyone with ideas has the empathy for patients. You're smart, Jean, but sterile. Cold. Detached." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My father walked into the hallway then, setting down a tray of drinks. He saw me, and his expression dropped into a sigh. "If you won't work at the clinic," he said, "then there's no place for you here." "Dad," I pleaded. "No," he said, firm. "You made your bed. Go lie in it. We've given everything we could." I looked down at the diploma in my hands. The same hands that, for years, cleaned surgical trays at their clinic. Filed records. Trained myself in coding systems on borrowed library computers. Worked 3 jobs to earn this degree, this dream. "I used my inheritance for college," I said. "The prize money. Grandma Nora's savings. That was meant for me." My mother turned her back. "Stop making a scene, Jean." So I did. I turned. Walked down the steps with my suitcase. My cap slipped off the handle. I didn't bother picking it up. Rain had started to fall. By the time I got to the end of the street, I was soaked. They never called me after that. I spent the next 3 months couch hopping between friends from school. The first week, I stayed with Lauren, but her apartment had no hot water and her boyfriend kept leering at me. After that, I moved in with my former lab partner, Yuki, who let me crash on her floor for 2 weeks. Eventually, I landed on Marcy's couch, a tiny space behind her kitchen, cramped and barely private. But she was kind, and sometimes kindness is all you need to survive. I worked mornings at a university cafe, afternoons temping at a receptionist desk in a tiny walk-in clinic, and evenings I answered phones for a private health center that didn't ask too many questions. At night, I'd heat up noodles and whisper affirmations into the dark. I will not go back. I will build something real. Something that can't be stolen. It was during one of those long, exhausting nights that I met Nathan. He was a third-year resident, barely older than me but already weighed down by sleepless nights and relentless rotations. I was scribbling a diagram on a napkin during my break, some new idea for reducing post-op recovery time by streamlining the way vitals were recorded across departments. I didn't think anyone noticed. But Nathan did. "You studying hospital admin?" he asked. I looked up, caught off guard. "Trying to improve the mess," I said with a tired laugh. He glanced at the napkin again. "That chart, have you modeled that in real time?" "No," I said, "just theory. But if we could automate it through a real-time tracking system with integrated alerts, I think we could reduce average recovery by at least 10%. Maybe more." He stared at me like I'd just solved something sacred. The next day, he brought coffee. The day after, a binder. A week later, we were spending every spare second building an idea on the back of borrowed software and big dreams. In a cramped apartment in Minneapolis, with a wobbly kitchen table and a borrowed laptop, we built the early prototype of what would become Oratech. I didn't tell anyone from back home. They didn't ask. Years passed. The first hospital signed on. Then 2 more. By year 5, Oratech's real-time monitoring system had reduced post-op complications by nearly 30% in early trials. By year 7, we'd gone national. Nathan and I got married in a tiny courthouse ceremony with just 2 witnesses, Marcy and Dr. Halvorsen, my old college professor who showed up unannounced with flowers and tears in her eyes. She said she knew I would change the field. I believed her for the first time. Then came our son, Dylan. I named him after the storm that followed the summer I left home. The storm that soaked my suitcase and nearly drowned my spirit. But I survived it. And every time Dylan laughs, I remember that I didn't just survive, I rebuilt. For nearly a decade, I kept my head down and my name out of headlines. I didn't want the Sanders family finding me again just because success made me useful. But then something strange happened. 3 weeks before the wedding, an envelope arrived at Oratech's headquarters. No return address. Handwritten in gold ink. "Mr. Jason Hill and Ms. Madison Hill request the honor of your presence." I almost threw it out. I didn't recognize the names at first. Until I glanced at the RSVP list and saw it, Ava Moreland, not Jean Sanders. Someone from our events team must have added my professional name without checking. But the groom's name stood out, Jason Hill, CEO of Oak Rise Hospital Network. A man whose hospitals had been in contact with us for over a year, requesting a partnership. And Madison, my sister. The same sister I hadn't spoken to in 11 years. I checked the registry. Nothing mentioned our family name. Everything screamed prestige. Luxury. High Ridge Grand Hotel, champagne fountains, live orchestra, $300 and entree catering. And yet, there it was. A quiet, backdoor invitation. As if I were a mystery guest in someone else's story. Nathan didn't want me to go. "You don't owe them a thing," he said, rubbing my shoulder. "Especially not your presence." "I know," I replied. "But I want to see it. I want to stand in the room they tried to erase me from." And so we went. The ballroom was drenched in gold and crystal. Chandeliers sparkled above a marble floor so polished it mirrored the cracks in everyone's smiles. Dylan tugged at his tie. Mom, this thing's choking me. I knelt to adjust it. Just hang in there a little longer, okay? You'll get pool time after. He nodded, pouting. I rose, turned, and then I saw her. Madison. Ivory dress. Champagne glass in hand. Perfect makeup. But when our eyes met, her entire body locked up like a glitching computer. The glass trembled. Faces turned. Voices hushed. Then came my mother. Her smile dropped faster than her color. Her clutch tightened. My father moved in front of Madison instinctively, still guarding his favorite. What are you doing here? My mother hissed. Before I could speak, Nathan stepped in. My wife is a guest, he said calmly. She's the CEO of Oratech. We were invited by the groom. It was like a firecracker went off in the silence. Oratech? Wait, she's Jean? Eva Moreland? Someone whispered to their spouse, eyes darting. A woman in a red silk dress leaned in. She invented the ORA system. That's being installed at our hospital next quarter. Whispers turned into full-blown recognition. I hadn't even taken a sip of champagne when Jason, the groom, walked over. Wait, are you really Eva Moreland? He asked, confusion melting into something like awe. I nodded. Madison couldn't speak. Her fingers were white around her glass stem. Jason looked from her to me. Your system is revolutionizing post-surgical care. I smiled faintly. Congratulations on the wedding, I said. That was all I needed to say. Because sometimes, just being there is enough to set an entire facade on fire. Jason stared at me like he was seeing something completely new, like a man who just realized he'd been handed a box wrapped in velvet only to find it filled with sand. His eyes flicked back to Madison, who stood too still, too polished, too perfect. Her champagne glass was no longer trembling. It was rigid in her hand, held like a weapon she didn't know how to use. We've been trying to reach Oratech for over 6 months, Jason said slowly, the words coated in disbelief. We submitted a partnership proposal through your corporate portal. I gave him a polite, emotionless nod. I believe your emails were flagged. We receive hundreds every week. It wasn't a lie. It wasn't the whole truth either. I didn't expect to meet you here, he continued. His voice dropped slightly. Madison never mentioned your name. No, I said. I imagined she wouldn't. Jason blinked, absorbing that. I could almost see the math happening in his mind. The way he began lining up her half-truths against what he was now seeing with his own eyes. She told me her sister dropped out of college, he said quietly. That your family tried to help, but you couldn't adjust to the demands of the healthcare field. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. Silence is a scalpel when the truth sits underneath the surface. She said she helped develop the early prototypes at Oratech, Jason added, still watching me for a reaction. That made me smile. Just a little. You should ask her which version she helped with. We went through 8 in the first 2 years. All coded from scratch in a 1-bedroom apartment. He went quiet. Not defensive. Just thinking. I hope you enjoy the evening, I said, stepping away. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt anymore. I was above it. And I wanted her to feel every inch of that. From across the room, I saw Madison lean in toward a group of older guests, doctors, by the look of them, forcing a smile while one of them asked a question about current post-op care models. Her face strained to stay composed, but her answer was shaky. Yes, we still use an approach based on ER cell therapy, she trailed off. The silver-haired man raised an eyebrow. That model was phased out nearly 3 years ago. You're still using it? Madison laughed, high-pitched and false. Only at some smaller facilities. My parents' clinic prefers traditional methods. Jason had returned to her side by then. I watched him quietly as his expression changed, not anger, not yet, but doubt. Pure, unfiltered doubt. And doubt spreads like mold when truth opens a window. 15 minutes later, I was standing near the bar when I felt someone approach from behind. I didn't turn. I didn't think you'd actually show up, came a familiar voice, light, cutting, and honey-sweet with bitterness. I turned slowly to face her. My mother. Helen Sanders. Draped in black sequins, her hair stiff with hairspray, her voice perfectly modulated for judgment. This is Madison's day, she said, the words clipped like a warning. You're ruining everything. I looked at her. I mean, really looked at her. And for the first time in my life, I didn't flinch. I was invited, I said simply. By the groom. You came to show off, she hissed, voice low but shaking. To make us all look small. No, I said softly. You did that yourselves. I'm just here. Her jaw twitched. Her eyes darted to the guests, to Jason, to Madison across the room. Eva, she snapped, using my real name for the first time in years, you should know your place. That was when Jason reappeared behind her. He had heard enough. You're Eva's mother, he asked, looking directly at her. She blinked. Hesitated. Then nodded. Jason's voice dropped to a new tone. Firm. Steady. Dangerous. What was it you told me again? That Madison was the only one who followed the family legacy. That her sister was a dropout who couldn't handle real work. My mother stammered. That's not, I didn't mean. But I was already turning away. I think it's time I go, I said calmly, pulling a cream-colored envelope from my bag. For you, I said, handing it to Jason. A small share in Oratech. Not much, but enough to show that I came here in good faith. Jason held the envelope like it might burn him. His eyes were wide, grateful, stunned, guilty. Thank you, he said softly. I nodded and turned to leave. But I didn't get far. The sound of heels, fast, angry heels, clicked behind me like gunshots on marble. What the hell are you doing? Madison's voice was no longer sweet. It was shrill, cracked, and cornered. She grabbed my arm and pulled me into the hallway near the restrooms. The door clicked shut behind us. Her face was flushed with fury. You're ruining my wedding, she spat. Why couldn't you just disappear again? I looked at her. Not the gown. Not the lashes. Not the pearls around her neck. I looked at the little sister I used to tuck into bed, who used to steal my sweaters, who once cried when I left for college. You're the one who's unraveling, I said. She trembled. You don't know what it's been like. I had to fight for everything. I almost laughed. You had parents. Support. Money. A clinic waiting for you. And you still lied. Her breath hitched. You don't understand, she said weakly. I understand perfectly, I replied. You lied because deep down, you knew it wasn't enough. That no matter what you copied, you'd never be the one who created it. She was crying now, mascara smudged. I didn't come to take anything from you, Madison, I said quietly. I came to close the door. That's all. And then I left her there. Shaking in a white dress. Alone in a hallway of her own fairy tale. Nathan was waiting near the exit, Dylan in his arms. Pool time? I asked Dylan. His tired face lit up. Yes. We walked out together. Heads turned. But not the way they used to. Not in judgment. In awe. And I didn't even look back. Exactly 1 month after Madison's wedding, the visitor chime rang through the soft hush of my office. I was in the middle of reviewing a draft contract with the Seattle West Hospital System when Meredith, my assistant, knocked gently and stepped inside. There's a man here, she said, keeping her voice low. No appointment. Says he just needs a few minutes. I looked up, already knowing the name before she said it. Jason Hill. The groom. The hospital CEO. And, apparently, Madison's husband. I closed my laptop with a soft click. Send him in. Jason entered looking like he hadn't slept in days. His tie was loosened, shirt wrinkled. Dark circles under his eyes betrayed more than exhaustion, they screamed disillusionment. Thank you for seeing me, he said as he sat without waiting for permission. I simply watched him, saying nothing. Silence has a way of making people confess what they never intended to. I started looking into things, he began. A week after the wedding, I couldn't shake the feeling something wasn't right. I nodded once. He continued. Madison never went to Stanford. My breath didn't catch. My pulse didn't change. I had expected this moment for years. She forged transcripts. The documents she showed me fake. Even the degree on her wall. Turns out, she was never more than a receptionist at your parents' clinic. Still, I said nothing. She told people she designed Oriteca's early architecture, he said with a bitter laugh. But the files I found, they were yours. Your name. Your notes. Even the patient workflow diagrams she printed for board meetings, they matched content from your published research. He paused. I feel like I married a myth. I leaned back in my chair, fingers laced in front of me. So why are you here? Jason's voice dropped. To apologize. And, to inform you. The Sanders Clinic is under federal investigation. That got my attention. They billed Medicare for services never performed, he said. Used outdated CPT codes. Claimed they offered procedures that haven't been legal in 5 years. There's talk of massive insurance fraud. Possibly millions. I nodded slowly, letting it sink in, not shock, but the deep ache of history resurfacing. You worked there during the early years, he added. Your name's in the billing system, briefly. I had no access to financial approvals, I replied. I was a data entry temp for 3 months. Most of the codes I submitted came from printouts I was handed. I didn't even know what half of them meant back then. Jason nodded. Your login was deactivated around the same time the phantom charges started. I had a forensic analyst verify it. And you want, what exactly? I asked. If you have anything, emails, schedules, files from back then, it could help. I turned my screen toward me and began typing. In less than 30 seconds, I uploaded a folder from an encrypted backup drive, PDFs, timestamps, even an email I once sent urging them to stop double billing patients with chronic conditions. I handed him a USB drive. Forward that to your legal team. He looked down at it with a weight in his hands heavier than plastic. I'm not filing any claims, I said. I'm not interested in revenge. This is just closure. Jason stood slowly. Madison called me 20 times after I left. Said she wanted to fix things. Then she threatened to tell your son who you really are. I didn't flinch. She called me too. I didn't pick up. He laughed dryly. I didn't either. Some people can't stand the sound of things collapsing without someone there to blame. He paused at the door. Thank you. For not ruining the wedding. It didn't need to be ruined, I said, eyes still on my screen. The truth always wrecks what's built on lies. He nodded once and walked out. As the door shut behind him, I stood and walked to the window, watching the afternoon sun stretch shadows across the street below. My phone chimed. Nathan picked up Dylan. Zoo day. Want to come? I smiled. Give me 20 minutes. Just finishing up some printing. But as I turned back to my desk, another notification blinked on my screen, an email from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. A formal witness request. I didn't reply. Not yet. Sometimes silence does more damage than a gavel ever could. That Friday, as I sorted through Q2 financials, Meredith walked in with a cream envelope. "No sender listed," she said. "But I think you'll want to read it." I recognized the handwriting instantly. Madison. I didn't open it right away. I stared at it. Let it sit like a ghost beside my laptop. 17 minutes passed before I slid my pen down and cracked the flap. Inside was a single page. No letterhead. Just slanted, slightly smudged blue ink. "The clinic officially shut down last week. Not because of you. Because of them. Jason moved out Monday. He left his ring and 2 sentences. I need truth. And I need self-respect. I'm not asking for money. Or forgiveness. But I needed you to know. You weren't wrong. You were never wrong. They were just afraid of you." I stared at the page. Not because it moved me, but because it didn't. The wounds were gone. Only faint scars remained. That night, Dylan and I sat on the back porch, eating ice cream and watching fireflies dance in the garden. "Mom," he asked suddenly, "was that lady in the white dress your friend?" I smiled. "Not really. But, maybe one day." He paused, squinting up at the stars. "She looked like she was trying too hard to smile," he said. "Out of the mouths of babes." "I think she was," I said. Nathan came outside, handed me a blanket. He didn't ask what the letter said. He never had to. 2 weeks passed after the letter. I didn't reply. I didn't burn it either. It remained where I'd first placed it, in the drawer beneath my desk, resting between archived contracts and unused note cards. Not hidden. Not displayed. Just shelved. Like so many things from that life. Then, on a slow Saturday morning while Dylan was building a Lego city in the living room and Nathan was prepping French toast, I opened my laptop to sort through internship applications for Oriteka's annual health systems training program. It was something Nathan and I had built quietly, over years. A program for students like me, first generation, underfunded, underappreciated. It provided a path into the industry without nepotism or connections. Just effort and skill. Every year, we accepted a few interns based solely on blind applications. But this time, one name froze me mid-scroll. Madison Hill. There it was, plain as day. No fluff. No Stanford lies. No surname manipulation. Just a simple digital form and an attached letter, handwritten, scanned. I don't expect a second chance. But I need to become someone different. Not for approval. For peace. If you still believe people can change, I want to learn. I'll start from scratch. No titles. No assumptions. Just me. Madison. I sat with it for a long time. Her resume was thin. Just the receptionist job, a list of certifications she was now pursuing, and a few short-term admin roles since Jason's departure. But the letter. It didn't beg. It didn't brag. It didn't even try to excuse anything. And somehow, that made it more honest than anything I'd ever received from her. I didn't write back. Instead, I forwarded her file to our internship board with a single line of instruction. If accepted, place her on a 3-month unpaid trial. No preferential treatment. Evaluate on merit. 3 days later, HR notified me that her application had been conditionally accepted. 2 weeks after that, I spotted her at the Midwest Health Tech Conference. Oritech had its own corner booth, sleek, modern, brightly lit with touchscreen demos and informational guides lining the edge. To the left, we had an open zone where visitors could explore medical coding software and test real-world use cases. She was there. Not in silk. Not in heels. No wedding ring. No parents. She wore a standard blue lab coat, her hair pulled back, sleeves rolled to her elbows. She had a clipboard in one hand, a laptop tucked under the other arm, and a furrowed brow as she compared insurance data across two screens. We locked eyes, just briefly. She didn't smile. Neither did I. But she gave me a small nod. I returned it. That was all. Back in my office that evening, under the warm light of my desk lamp, I opened a document we'd been working on for over 3 years, the EVA 2030 Initiative, a fully funded scholarship foundation for first-generation students entering healthcare tech and administration. 20 full-ride scholarships. Mentorships. Internship guarantees. No family legacy required. No hidden surname advantages. Just grit. Just effort. I signed the final papers and closed my laptop. The foundation would launch in the fall. Quietly. No press release. No headline. It wasn't about fanfare. It was about the kids sitting on couches eating noodles to buy textbooks. It was about people like me. And, maybe, people like Madison too. A month later, I was in the backyard with Dylan, hands covered in soil. We were planting herbs as basil, rosemary, and tiny lavender sprouts we'd picked up at the farmer's market. Dylan held a tomato seedling with both hands like it was sacred. "Where should we put this one, Mom?" he asked. "Near the brick wall or by the fence?" "Brick wall," I said, wiping sweat from my brow. "More sunlight." He tilted his head. "Do plants get sad if they don't have space?" I smiled, crouching beside him. "They don't grow well if their roots are too crowded. They need room to stretch. Just like people." He paused, then nodded as he nestled the sprout into the soil. "I like planting stuff," he said. "Feels like we're doing something kind." Nathan came out just then, carrying a pitcher of lemonade. He didn't say anything, just watched us for a moment before setting the tray down on the little garden bench and smiling. That evening, after Dylan went to bed and the stars blinked to life above our roof, I sat on the porch and watched the shadows shift across our lawn. Some part of me used to believe that closure came when someone apologized. But now I knew better. Sometimes closure doesn't come from words at all. Sometimes it comes from doing the work. From walking away and not looking back. From knowing who you are, even if no one else ever says it out loud. From standing in a room full of people who once mocked you, and letting them feel the silence of your success. And sometimes, it comes from leaving just enough space for something to bloom again, even if it never will. It was a quiet Tuesday morning when I got the email from Madison. No dramatic subject line. No long preamble. Just, "Thank you. I'll work hard." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. She had already started showing up to the coding classes early, staying late, asking the kind of questions people ask when they've finally stopped pretending to know everything. Reports from the training supervisor noted that she was respectful, punctual, and showed humility without trying too hard to impress. I didn't interfere. For the first time in my life, I wasn't looking over my shoulder at the wreckage my family left behind me. I was looking forward. I was watching new interns, new employees, and even my son, Dylan, explore a world that didn't have to be built on favoritism, shame, or silence. Still, the past has a way of tugging. One afternoon, while reviewing a partner proposal from a tech startup in Austin, Meredith walked in with a stack of mail. In it was a manila envelope with no return address, stamped from Metafield. Inside? A property deed. The clinic. The Sanders Family Clinic. Signed over to the federal government. Accompanying it was a 2-page legal document and an official closure notice. All remaining assets were frozen pending investigation. Staff had been let go. My parents' names were listed under defendants in ongoing fraud inquiry. I stared at the paper for a long while. Not with joy. Not even vindication. Just a quiet, hollow awareness that the last thing tethering me to that life was now dust. That night, Nathan and I sat under the porch lights, a breeze lifting strands of his hair as we sipped iced tea in silence. He knew before I spoke. "They lost everything," I said. "The clinic's gone." He didn't reply immediately. "Then, you okay?" "I should be," I said. But part of me still wonders if any of them ever looked at me and saw more than a disruption. Nathan reached over, covering my hand with his. They saw someone they couldn't control. And that terrified them. I nodded slowly. It wasn't bitterness anymore. It was understanding. I stood up and walked over to our little garden. Dylan had just watered the basil earlier that day. The leaves were bigger than ever. He ran outside then, holding a drawing. "Look, Mom. I made you." It was a crayon sketch of me standing in front of a hospital with the words "Future is safe" written above it. I blinked back tears. "Why did you write that?" I asked, kneeling. "Because you help people get better. And you fix the hospital stuff so nobody gets hurt. That means the future's safe, right?" I laughed gently and pulled him into a hug. Right. Later that week, while finalizing speaker arrangements for the upcoming Midwest Health Tech Summit, I asked the program coordinator to add a session titled, "Rewriting the System: Why Merit Should Speak Louder Than Legacy." Speaker, Jean Sanders. Not Eva Moreland. Jean. The name I had once felt too ashamed to carry now stood as a flag of survival. And maybe, one day, even pride. 2 nights before the conference, I walked past the training lab and saw Madison again. She was seated alone, flipping through a dense manual on post-operative billing protocols. Her hair was pulled back, her glasses slipping down her nose, but she was focused. Really focused. I paused, unseen. Just watching. She didn't look like the girl from the wedding. She didn't look like the sister who once told me to disappear. She looked like someone learning how to start over. And that's all it needed to be. The next day, she submitted her Week 9 evaluation to her supervisor with one final note in the comment box. "I used to fake everything because I thought perfection would save me. Now I understand it's effort that builds a life. Thank you for not slamming the door I once helped close." Her internship wasn't guaranteed to continue past 3 months. But if she kept this up, she'd earn it. And it would be her own. A few days later, I found myself sitting alone in my home office. I pulled out an old flash drive labeled ORA Gen 1 and plugged it into my laptop. There it was. The first prototype. Crude, ugly, inefficient. But it was mine. Ours. I remembered the ramen packets Nathan and I lived on while coding. The cheap chair with the broken wheel. The night we cried when the first algorithm finally stabilized. Not because it worked, but because no one could take it from us. I saved a copy of the prototype and uploaded it to our company's digital museum, a place we were building for internal use. A timeline of how Oratech came to be. The point wasn't just to honor the past. It was to show future interns, employees, and even our own children that every polished system began with chaos, grit, and long nights. That same evening, Dylan found me again, dragging a book behind him. It was one of those oversized illustrated ones about the human body. He pointed to a diagram of the heart. "What happens if it stops?" I blinked. "Then the body stops too." "But," he said, tapping the page again, "can someone else help it beat again?" I smiled. "Yes. If the right hands are there. If they know how." He nodded, satisfied. Nathan walked in then and dropped a kiss on my forehead. "We good?" I looked around at the house we built. The clinic I didn't need. The empire they never saw coming. "We're better than good," I said. I didn't need their apology. I didn't need a headline. I didn't even need the clinic. All I needed was this. My name. My work. My peace. The Midwest Health Tech Summit arrived with little fanfare but heavy meaning. Held in the newly renovated Easton Convention Center, it was the first in-person gathering since the pandemic to bring together pioneers in hospital systems, healthcare AI, and post-operative care. Oratech had a central booth, modern, clean, minimalist, echoing the company's philosophy: reduce noise, amplify care. I stood on the main stage that afternoon under bright lights, the hum of projectors behind me and rows of medical directors, hospital CEOs, and students watching quietly. Merit, I said into the microphone, isn't something that belongs to those born with legacy. It belongs to those who build it. Who fail with dignity. Who keep showing up. There was no applause, yet. Because they were listening. The hospital system is broken in many places. But the fix doesn't start with more money or newer titles. It starts with recognizing overlooked talent. The intern who bikes to their shift. The receptionist who rewrites workflows after hours. The nurse assistant who teaches herself insurance coding at night. Those are the people we built Oratech for. A pause. Then quiet applause. Madison sat in the third row. She didn't know I had seen her. But she was there. Dressed in plain black slacks, a gray blouse. Hair tied back. She sat still, taking notes. Not once did she raise her hand or try to stand out. After the talk, a few CEOs came up to shake my hand. Students asked for mentorship. A young woman named Amina told me she'd used our platform during her mother's surgery recovery and credited it for catching a complication early. That was the reward. Not revenge. After the event, I returned to my office and opened a drawer filled with unopened letters and documents from the last decade. The ones I never sent. The ones I never needed to. I picked up a folder titled 2020 Lawsuit, Withheld. Inside was a complete report from a private investigator I once hired, years ago, during a moment of weakness. It detailed the fraudulent billing practices at the Sanders Clinic long before Jason ever came to me. I never used it. Because I didn't need to. The universe has a way of turning mirrors toward liars. I shredded it that day. No need to carry dynamite when the building is already crumbling on its own. Weeks passed. Then, one Friday morning, an email landed in my inbox with the subject line: Final Internship Evaluation, Madison Hill. She'd passed. More than passed, she had excelled. Quietly. Consistently. Respectfully. Her supervisor's comments were simple but clear: she entered as a risk, left as an asset. I let the report sit untouched for 2 hours. Not because I was unsure. Because I needed to know I wasn't signing out of guilt. When I finally clicked approve, I added only one note. Permanent role offered, entry-level coding analyst. No modifications. No shortcuts. Let her earn the rest. That was it. Later that day, I walked past the training lab and saw her packing her laptop. She saw me. We paused. No tears. No hug. Just a nod. A deep, silent nod of understanding. And that was all it ever needed to be. That weekend, Dylan and I were back in the garden. The tomato sprout had grown taller than we expected. Almost past his shoulder. Look at that, he said proudly. It grew so much. I ruffled his hair. Told you. Good sunlight. Good soil. And space, he added seriously. I smiled. Exactly. Nathan joined us with iced tea in hand, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he watched us. Future farmer, he teased. Nope, Dylan said. Maybe a coder like Mom. I laughed. One line of code at a time. As the sun dipped behind the fence, we sat in silence. 3 lives once built in chaos now wrapped in calm. No drama. No declarations. Just peace. That night, as I prepared for bed, I found myself standing in front of the mirror. I looked at my own reflection for a long time. Not the corporate title. Not the scars. Just Jean. The girl who once stood at her parents' door, soaked in rain, a diploma in one hand and nothing else in the world. She had made it. Not just out, but forward. And when I crawled into bed beside Nathan and he pulled the blanket over both of us, I whispered softly into the quiet. I'm not angry anymore. He didn't open his eyes, but he smiled. That was the real victory. Not the company. Not the recognition. But being able to lay my head down without bitterness pooling in my chest. I had built my own garden. And I'd left space for others to bloom, even those who once tried to uproot me. Final reflection. Not all revenge stories need fire. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply not needing one. Sometimes the real triumph is letting go, and still being far, far ahead. Madison will never be my best friend. She may never earn back trust. But that's not the point. Forgiveness isn't always necessary. Walking free is. And when you finally find your peace, not borrowed, not begged, but built, no one can ever take it from you again. Jean's journey reminds us that closure isn't something given, it's something claimed. Sometimes, the best revenge is not destroying someone else, it's building a life so whole, they can no longer reach you. Have you ever had to walk away in silence? Or reclaim your dignity without saying a word? Share your story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Echoes, where every story speaks louder than revenge.